What up, everyone? Welcome back to Happy Hour. I hope you have your drinks in hand. Maggie and I are ready to talk some Packers. I am Perri Goldstein, as always, with my lovely co-host in everything, Maggie Loney. Yeah, girl. How are you doing today? Happy Monday.
I know, this is the only reason I look forward to Mondays now. So you have your beer, I have my old fashioned. Let's go. Let's talk football.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, so we have actually a lot to talk about today. Packers are back in camp. We've made a few cuts, unfortunately. Elijah Wellman, that was fun while it lasted. But more importantly, today, Kenny Clark and QB1, Aaron Rodgers, had some presser interviews, if you'll call it that, answered some questions for us. So let's dive into what they talked about.
Yeah, I think the overwhelming theme from both of them was just, I think Kenny Clark honestly said it best when he was like, I miss football. Kenny, so did we, same, so much same. And I think the QB1 is also tired of hypotheticals. Those were my two takeaways.
Yep. Aaron wants you to stop asking him dumb hypothetical questions about his future and ask him questions about this season, which honestly, I agree. And that he can control what he can control. Aaron really likes the controllables, doesn't he?
He's type A. He's like us.
I was going to say, I relate to that. But I think there were sort of two themes to interviews, right? Everyone wants to hear about what camp is like and what Lambeau is like due to COVID. And then everyone wants to hear about what we think the team is going to be like this season. It was pretty clear from both of them, honestly. To me, they felt really safe in Lambeau. Felt like the protocols that the Packers put in place made everyone feel safe. The guys seem to be taking it seriously and are holding each other accountable. It was another kind of big thing that Aaron talked about, was just personal accountability once you leave the building. And, they both were not going to opt out, which didn't really surprise me at all. They're both kind of in pretty big years, Kenny especially with his contract coming up. So I'm glad they decided not to. And it seems like from what they said that Devin will be the only one that will.
Yeah, I kind of got that vibe too. And I don't know if it adds anything to it, but as of Saturday, Wisconsin officially became a mandatory mask state whenever you're inside a building. So I feel like that adds another layer. The players talk about being responsible and holding each other accountable. And granted, they could still meet up at a player's house because that's not technically, there's no mandates for that. It's recommended, of course, to wear your mask. But I think that the players all kind of know, you feel like going into this season, the healthy team wins, right? You're going to make a push if you can roster your whole squad. So these guys are going to take it really seriously, and they're going to make the most of the opportunity because, we don't really know what this season's going to look like. So if they can stay healthy, that's huge.
Kenny said that too. He said he felt like, whatever team takes COVID and the protocols the most seriously will probably be one of the ones that makes it the longest, because that means that your team is healthy. That's almost the competitive advantage of this season, is making sure you're quarantining. Very weird.
It is weird. And I think it's also we talked about on Pack's What She Said last week, the idea of there being some type of bubble for NFL players, and you can't really have an entire 200-person bubble for each team. That doesn't really work. But, we looked kind of as the players have been adding to this list over the last week. It was Mason Crosby, and now today Hunter Bradley's on it, the long snapper. So thinking about this reserve of players, and if Rashawn Gary or somebody's on the list, you have backups, or you have Z and P who take the bulk of the snaps there in the first place. But if you lose a long snapper and a kicker, then you're thinking about Lucas Patrick as your backup long snapper, and J.K. Scott kicking field goals. And the special teams, I think, is where this is going to be a really interesting year to kind of see how that plays out, because a lot of the players, Christian Kirksey earlier in the season had talked about how every player, unless your name is Aaron Rodgers, you basically cross-train once a week. You're in a special teams meeting just in case you're called in, to be a gunner or something. So kind of what that would look like then, as you might see a guy like Christian Kirksey on the field, or I don't know, Alan Lazard as a gunner, some of these guys who will have bigger roles. Something. It would be really interesting now if they're also tasked with taking those special team snaps, because guys can't.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the good news is, right, it's still early. We've still got like a full month until the season starts. So hopefully those guys get off the list in time and can stay healthy. And the reserve list doesn't necessarily mean that they have COVID. It could mean that they came in contact with someone they later learned tested positive. So my fingers are crossed for them. I hope they're okay. 2 out of the 3 major special teamers are now on that list. So like we'll see some big guys step up in their place.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, like, and I know that's kind of the buzzword. I feel like we've never had a season like this, so it's hard to speculate on what could happen. But, you see, like, Geronimo Allison opted out, and he just had a newborn. And it was kind of the same with Marquise Goodwin, just had a baby. Makes sense that those players would opt out. And then you have a guy like Matt Stafford, who has not opted out, but then he's on the COVID reserve list. And we know what just happened with his wife and the brain tumor last season. She also just had a baby. So there's a lot of variables that these players have to consider. And, Brandon Bostic on Twitter a couple days ago posed the question for any NFL player. And he basically said, like, if you were in the situation, would you have played? Because he answered that, yes, he felt obligated to, as an undrafted player, like, this is kind of your one shot.
Yeah.
But then it could also be the Elijah Wellman, best mullet in the business route, where you are with a team and then, like, day one of training camp, you have to be one of the guys cut to get down to the 80s. So it really just, even if these players are willing to put themselves at risk for this, it just might not be enough this season because we don't really know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I feel bad for some of those undrafted guys because it's already a hard road in and of itself, and the season's no different. But hey, like, not that I hope that this happens, but we had some guys come into camp maybe along the line. We still have a week-ish, a couple of days until the opt-out deadline. So who knows what will happen in that time. We know this is too sophisticated for a happy hour, Nagler. All right, fine. Well, I hope that they get their shot. That's all I was going to say. All right, Nagler.
I know, he comes in and just bombs the thing, and now we're all
Should I just chug the beer?
Chug.
Bane voice. Just kidding. I can never do the Bane voice.
See, he's got to come back at like 6:45. You'll be 2 beers deep. I'll be 2 old fashions deep, and then he can come see how sophisticated the check is. Yeah.
Well, another thing that they talked about, right, is that there's not really going to be any fans. I don't think anybody anticipates that there will be. I don't know who out there is that optimistic, but it's not me. But the one thing that I loved from Aaron was, like, he's like, let's get ready for some more free plays.
Yeah. He's like, oh, we're gonna turn these lemons into so much lemonade, and this is when they need MVS, right? Like, that was like his one role in 2019 was to be the guy that just sprints 70 yards downfield on free plays. I'm calling it now. There's gonna be like an 8 touchdown season for MVS, and it's going to be all 40 plays. Yards or less. Yep, just
bet. We should keep track of all the bets we make like that throughout the season.
Terrible bets, like
whatever. But no,
right, there's one.
It's cool, right? Like, that's something that he's really good at, and he's already thinking, like, okay, what can our advantages be in this weird season? Like, how can we kind of play the empty stadium to our advantage? And, we're going into some stadiums that are typically louder or have fake noise.
Not to name names.
And, like, maybe we can capitalize on that, right? So that's cool. I mean, everyone loves a good Rodgers free play. I think he already has, like, the record for touchdowns on free plays by a mile. So let's just keep it going.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's one of the things too that players especially have had to consider. Like, I know we've talked ad nauseum about Tramon Williams and what that means if he would come back, and we know at this point it kind of feels like they're both waiting it out to see if he's needed, and he agrees to just come in and fill in that void if there's an opportunity there where they need him. But you look at the guys like Corey Linsley that have contract years, and, like, even if those players had thought about opting out, what does that mean for them? Like, or a Kevin King, like, it's like you have to weigh the responsibilities of your family versus the responsibilities of your livelihood. Like, if Kevin King were to opt out, what does his contract look like in 2021? Like, if he plays, he's very likely to get a nice contract because of the kind of season that he'd have. So
yeah, maybe. But, like, Kenny's like, I was never not going to. He feels like, and him and Rodgers both had the same response. Kind of is like, everyone has a different circumstance. Everyone's home is different. Everyone has to kind of Marshawn Lynch, look out for your chickens.
Protect your mentals.
Protect your mentals. Yeah. And like, think about it and separately. And obviously Kenny said, everyone in my household luckily is healthy. And this, it was never, an option for me to opt out. And he did say, like, I'm going to let the upstairs and my agent take care of things. And I'm here to work and I'm here to, contribute on the field, which I feel like is sort of the diplomatic answer. Right. But it was interesting to me too, that Aaron said, he actually talked to Devin before he made his announcement. Everyone, if you think Aaron's not a good teammate, his teammates call him to talk about big decisions. Like, that was my thought. I was like, oh, look, his teammates.
That was so subtle. You did that so like.
Oh my God. No, but seriously, I thought that was a really interesting tidbit that he added, that he, talked to him and told him, obviously, I'm going to play, but I respect your decision. And I mean, that's what it is to be a teammate, right?
Yeah. And I mean, last season, Blake Martinez and Ty Montgomery both had newborns at like the exact same time. So you think about, and there's plenty of players that we don't know about. Aaron Jones just had his baby, but he made it seem, from what we've gathered, that he's interested in playing. Like his family had been quarantining, but you never know what kind of things will crop up mid-season or what it would look like if somebody's family member ends up getting it and that player has no choice but to then quarantine. So, just kind of all the different variables. And it's not necessarily the players or the players' decisions, but who they come into contact with. And just all those different moving pieces make it really difficult to kind of, I think we both are in agreement at this point that the season will start, but we don't really know what it means beyond that point.
Yeah. I think week 1's going to be super interesting, just like super interesting. Aaron said today, it's all about the prep and the off the field and the conversations and the communication. And like, they're not going to be able to do every rep. It's obviously a super short off season. So like, how did your Zoom off season program go? Do your guys feel like, do they study the playbook? Do they feel cohesive, even though they don't have as many padded practices? I think it's kind of fun that we're going to get to see that against the Vikings, who obviously has a lot of new pieces and might struggle a little bit to put that all together, not in any biased way, just in like an objective way. When you have a lot of new players, that's something to think about already. He mentioned the rookies too, and how it takes rooks a little bit longer to jump up, and obviously they have even less time this season, right? So what is that going to look like? I personally think it's just going to be Aaron Jones running all over them again, but that's my prediction.
I also predict Zadarius Smith will get 17 sacks in the first game.
First game?
That's my unbiased opinion.
You want to bet on that?
Chugging bet. Shake. Yeah. No, absolutely not. A girl can dream. Yeah. All right. Should we have a question from Facebook? Should we check that out? We've never gone live on Facebook before, so this is new territory for us, and it is exciting. Let's see. Who is the best for number 2? And then the second comment is wide receiver. So Perri, if you had to guess who's your wide receiver 2, and we don't have to bet on it this time, we can just
It's Lazard. Until proven otherwise, it's Lazard. It was him last season, and I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be him this season.
Yeah, I agree. I think Equinemius will push for playing time. I think that Devin Funchess opting out of the season gives EQ a lot more opportunities, especially as like a big slot. But it's poor Tyler.
I agree.
Tyler's sick of talking about wide receivers.
I'm over it too. Like, how many times are we talking about the same 7 people? Like, we'll see. I don't know. We'll see. Obviously, Aaron Wright mentioned EQ. That was the first wide receiver name he mentioned today in his presser, which again thought was super interesting. He's coming back from injury. How's he going to look? He had a great rookie season, so I'm excited. Yes, another wide receiver 2 question. Here we go.
Sorry, guys.
Maybe we have a new watcher who wants to know our thoughts. All right, everyone's welcome. So that's my thought. What about you, Maggie?
Yeah, I agree. I think that Allen Lazard will definitely start as wide receiver 2, but I also wrote a very lengthy article last season about how Geronimo Ellison was going to just surpass all expectations and be wide receiver 2 for a long time. So I guess don't take any stock in what I say ever. And
okay, but before he got hurt in 2018, he looked so good. So
and that's what I based the whole article off of.
That wasn't the craziest thing to say this season. All right, I'll give you that.
So since nobody else wants us to talk about wide receivers, now what do we do?
I don't know. What else in the pressers today caught your eye? I thought they were super interesting.
Yeah, I think that you and I, like, we've talked about this before, but we very much were in that group of Packers fans that grew up watching Aaron Rodgers. So we have like this deep sentimental attachment to Aaron Rodgers, and it's no disrespect to Brett Favre or anybody else, but it's just every time we see Aaron Rodgers, it's like, oh, like he just makes us happy. And I don't know why that is. I think because we both talked about the fact that like our dads and Aaron Rodgers are the reason that we really fell in love with the sport, because, you know, our dads were there teaching us how to watch the game and study it and analyze it and be a Packer fan. And then who was the quarterback at the time when we were really coming into appreciating football was Aaron Rodgers, and he made it really fun for us the same way that Brett Favre made it really fun for a generation of fans. So every time we see him at a presser, I mean, Perri and I talk all day anyway. Like, I'm sure all of you are shocked by this, but his entire presser, we were just talking about how like we very much cherish all of these moments, and not to speak into hypotheticals because I refuse to entertain the hypotheticals just like QB1. I mean, it does. I mean, you think about like, you know, what this season looks like, and he's been at it for so long now that like, even for like the Tom Brady's and the Phillip Rivers, like imagine going to a brand new team now and then never getting to see that stadium full of fans. Like that's just such a unique.
Stop putting that out into the universe.
No, I'm talking about like Tom Brady in Tampa.
Oh, okay.
Like that's weird, right? Like your first time playing in a stadium.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. You don't have the support of the fans. Yeah.
Right.
I think the support of the fans is really interesting. I don't know if you and I think have both been watching baseball, and not having fans in the stadium is definitely weird. Like I unfortunately am a Mets fan, and
long suffering.
It's a true suffering. I think that's why I appreciate the Packers so much, because they actually win. Like I know what it's like to root for a team that loses all the time. But the guys have been talking so much about how in games that normally would feel very big and impactful and bottom of the ninth, they only need 2 runs, they feed off that crowd, and now they don't have that motivation. They don't have that energy. And I feel like football even more so feeds off of that, right? The crowd can be a super advantage or disadvantage to home team, away team, etc. And you feed off your fans' energies. Like Aaron said, it's going to be super weird being on a Sunday at Lambeau without fans. Like I'm sure you can attest to this. Like that environment is everything.
Yeah, especially like the way that they set up. I think that a lot of the takes that I saw on social media kind of echoed the way that I felt. But having gone to games previously, there's like an energy that a lot of us felt that Lambeau was kind of missing for the last couple seasons. And then with Matt LaFleur being in the home opener, I don't think I've ever been in a more electric environment. And it was the video boards with Za'Darius and Preston. You have Jamal Williams dancing. There's guys telling you to get loud, like stand up, it's 3rd down. Like I had never been to Lambeau and had that kind of energetic experience. So
the flashing lights.
Yeah, the strobe lights. And it felt like everything was kind of hyping up and they were on the right trajectory. And now to take a season out of it, I mean, it's not going to be a detrimental long term, but it really did change the culture. And I think
when we're back, it's going to be like 2 times the amount. Like we're going to appreciate it so much.
That's because you're going to be there for the opening week, and I'm
going to come up like every single weekend, just like make up for all the
save all your miles, and just fly on in.
Yeah. Okay, so we have some questions. What do you think?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, I think this is a twofer. So Cheesehead TV, or you think the same, but with all the fullbacks being cut, who plays fullback in a 2-back formation? And this kind of answers Tyler's question, right? Is it Josiah DeGuara in that fullback position?
Yes.
Yeah. I think at least for his rookie season, right? I think that's an interesting place for him to be. But personally, I think this is such a weird photo of you, Nagler. Personally, I think that in a 2-back set, I'd actually rather see like Jamal and Aaron, or Aaron and AJ Dillon.
Man, what about Jamal Williams playing a little fullback? He's nasty. Ooh.
Get all 3 of them in there?
Yeah. I told you 32. That's what we're rolling out.
No, we're rolling out. Everyone's asking about wide receivers. What do you mean? It's just going to be 23 and 32 personnel all season long.
Devontae's going to be on the bench like, man, I had 4 touches this whole season. We're just like, oh.
Jay Sternberger season. Line them up.
I'm Devontae's going to demand a trade just like Aaron Rodgers if we keep talking
please
about.
Stop.
Quick, we're going off the rails.
Stressing me out. Okay, how about we do 31?
Okay.
And then we get Devontae out there.
All right, he's like, thank God, finally, Perry's talking some sense.
Yeah, there we go. Because he's watching this, right?
Yeah, so is Za'Darius Smith. In my head, he's watching it.
Yeah, hey Nagler, we gotta get Zadarius Smith on here, right?
Just as a subtle aside.
Do we need another candle for Maggie's monitor? I think so. Also, how do we get Facebook users to have their names in here?
I really like that it's like ominous.
I like the anonymity.
Maybe it's like my mom. Maybe somebody wants to just talk mad game and then not. My mom's actually really sweet. She would never do that. My friends probably would come in here and be like, nice hair, loser. And then be like, oh, shoot.
Well, good thing that none of our friends watch any of our Packers stuff.
That's not true. I'm pretty sure people are watching right now. I'm going to get a text about it, I bet.
Oh, cute.
It's another bet.
All right. So somebody asked today also about someone that we've been talking about for a while.
Okay.
I don't remember who it was, so I'm sorry to whatever Packers beat guy asked Kenny about Kingsley, but he talked a good amount about how he feels about Kingsley Keke and that he has tons of potential and that he thinks he could be a great rusher on top of being part of that run stopping defense. So what do you think about that? I thought that was interesting. I would have never expected that.
I mean, I think that that's part of the problem too, is like, we know what Kenny Clark can do and what his bull rush looks like. And I think that Kingsley Keke has shown a lot of promise in his limited snaps as a pass rusher. But like, that's when you need a guy like Tyler Lancaster to really step up. Like, you need the traditional nose tackle because we know that getting pressure on the quarterback was never the problem. The Packers blitzed like one of the least amount of teams in the league and then still generated a ton of pressure. But then we saw what happened in the NFC Championship game. So it's like, we know that Kenny Clark can do it. Right. It's the rush is fine. So as much as I'm like excited to see Kingsley Keke take some snaps and be more of a second pass rusher, you know, it kind of feels like Everson Griffin. Like, I was excited to think about what that pass rush would look like if the Packers did sign him, but he wasn't going to be in there as like, you know, your run defender. He was in there to generate pressure. So when we talked about wanting Michael Pierce, just saying before the Vikings signed him, that's what you're looking for.
Playing, so
fair, but like snacks. Yeah. That's why we go get snacks.
Yeah. But I mean, okay, so Kenny, this is a great segue too, because Kenny also said that this is such a passing league now. And so he said, like, you know, you don't want to get all caught up in running formations all the time, maybe on first and second down, but it's going to come down to what he says, Pettine says, is mentality and game plan, which I thought was really interesting because the personnel that we gained and lost and sort of how we shifted our roster, like, very much reflects that sentiment, is that like they're still very much like eye on the pass and stopping the pass and like not even really I've seen them answer this question a million times about the NFC championship game. Like, stop asking about the NFC championship game. First of all, we know what happened. Okay. There's no new answers.
Spoiler alert. We were all there.
There's no new answers coming from whatever, like, you ask them about it, but like, they still are like, yeah, okay, we had a bad game, worst time to have a bad game. But like, they still had one of the top defenses in the league last season, and they're still going to be going out and trying to stop like the big play.
Well, and like Mike Pettine said that in his presser in like April or May, like it was a while ago now, and he had said like, yeah, it was a bad time to have the worst game of the season, but here we are, NFC Championship game, and we have the worst game of the season. Like, there's no reason at this point to keep rehashing the old news. Like, talking about it's not going to change it. It's the same way that everybody, for God knows why, talked about the NFC Championship game in 2014 repeatedly. Like,
because it's so
hurts.
Yeah, because everyone likes to like rehash the pain, and it's much easier.
Yeah,
I don't. But it's much easier. Obviously, it's also like the recency bias, right? Like, it's the last thing that you think of. It's the last thing that like that was left for us before the end of the season, and so obviously we're gonna think about it because that's how we ended our season. When I went home and cried in the shower.
No.
I did. I was really, really, really drunk.
I was part of the tears.
Yeah.
Okay, well then let's talk about expectations for last season's draft class, because, you know, they're all coming into what'll be their second season in the NFL. Right. There is not a bigger Rashawn Gary fan than Perri Goldstein. I'm putting that out there right now, so everybody can just stop. Perry's going to hype this man up all day long and twice on Sundays, and she should. But if we get the kind of production that we're expecting out of Rashawn Gary, Darnell Savage, Elton Jenkins already is a locked-in starter, and Jay Sternberger is about to be TE1. So, I mean, that's like a home run draft class for Goot.
Yeah. I have high expectations. I think people are so keen on judging right off the bat. And from everyone that I've talked to who's been part of the league for as long as they have, they always say you need at least 2 to 3 years to let a draft class develop. And so for me, I'm like, they've only had 1 year under the belt. Obviously, we have super high expectations for Jace, and the coaching staff has also said, he's a huge part of our game plan, as he should be. I think he's going to be a playmaker. Rashawn, again, like, look at rushers like Z and Preston. It took them 4 years in the league to get to where they are. So stop judging the man after 1 season. First of all, he's going to have more snaps. So I think this is going to be a really great place for us to see how he develops. He's had a whole offseason training his ass off. I don't know if we can curse on this. I'm going to.
Ass barely counts.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, he's been training his ass off, and he's slimmed down. He looks really agile, and he's going to take Kyler Fackrell's snaps. So we'll get to see if he makes that jump. I feel really good about last year's draft class. I think all of them, even if they make slight leaps and slight additions. Another thing that Kenny said today is that, someone asked him, how do you feel no one brought in we didn't bring anyone in free agency or in the draft on the D-line. What does that make you feel for the guys in the room and their development? He said, that's great. That's what we want, is we feel like everyone in our room can do what we need them to do. And so that means Kingsley Keke, and someone just brought up in the chat, is this a, make or break year for Montravius Adams? Yeah, it is. And so I think this draft class could be a home run.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're in a kind of that catch-22 situation when you're like a Kenny Clark, where you have to have that confidence in the guys playing around you, and you want this to be an opportunity for them. You want it to be hey, look, guys, they didn't bring anyone in. This is your opportunity. You have to seize the moment. But then at the same time, you kind of wonder what it would be like had they brought in someone, because Kenny would have hyped that person up alongside him and been hey, this is it. Right, exactly. So I think that Brian Gutekunst just said repeatedly that they've got all the confidence in the world in a lot of their young guys. And I feel like we're allowed to say this, but when Jacob Westendorf, one of the godfathers of Game On, interviewed Kingsley Keke on Pack a Day a couple weeks ago, Kingsley Keke was wearing a Rashawn Gary shirt. And
was he really?
Yeah, and he talked about how good Rashawn Gary is going to be. So
let's go. Yeah.
I mean, you're hearing it from the horse's mouth. These guys are psyched, and they're hyping each other up, and I think that that's all you can ask for, because when you're in an environment that is toxic or it's hard to work around, we talk about the 2017, 2018 Packers kind of falling into that, where there was some a lack of chemistry in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you could have built a better squad than 2019 from a cohesion, a unity standpoint. So and then you bring in a guy like Christian Kirksey, who's a locker room leader. I don't think Ricky Wagner is going to be a problem, so the people that they brought in are only going to enhance the culture and that leadership role. And there you go. You're building off of the pieces that are already there. And I think this team is set for so much success.
Yeah. And I think when you create a cohesion and a brotherhood, like we did last season, the majority of the team is still back, right? So that vibe and that feeling is going to stay the same in the locker room. And I think guys like Christian Kirksey, like you just said, they're going to come in and they're just going to feed off of that, and they're hungry. And I think also personality wise, he is just going to fit so perfectly with ZMP. I just imagine this new little trio they got going on. Right? It's that leadership, excitement, and it just makes guys want to come in and work. It sets a tone. I think one thing that I think about a lot about the Packers is what makes the Packers as a franchise successful year in and year out. And one of them is just it's born into the team that they are a winning franchise, and that every week you expect to go, in Matt LaFleur's words, 1-0, right? And so I think when you come from maybe some other franchises where that's not the case, whatever that may be, I think it's top down, and I think it's historic that you come to Green Bay and you expect to win. A 6-9-1 season is our worst season in my memory. And that, right? That says a lot, because there is that expectation that we will win. And I think when you get guys who have winning mentalities, because football is such a mental game, right? It's going out and knowing that you are better than your opposition. And I think that those are the people we bring in, and that's the culture that we breed in our draft classes.
Yeah, and I know that fans had a little bit of disdain for like a Demarius Randall, and I think a lot of his misfortune in Green Bay was playing in a position that he wasn't comfortable with. You know, we saw what he looked like when he transitioned to safety, and I think this is a really good segue into a question we have from Facebook user who's been very busy tonight. Facebook user asking a lot of questions, but Demarius Randall, if you watch the NFL Top 100, they basically said, "Have you made your list yet?" And he said no. And then they said, well, who's number one? And he said Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
So, you know, just the respect that Aaron Rodgers garners throughout the league. And Demarius Randall was just in awe of him, talking about him, saying, like, you know, some of the throws we've seen him make in practice. If you watch Family Night, like the dimes that he's able to drop. One of the clips they used was the Chiefs game to Jamal Williams, where the whole sideline was like
freaking out.
Oh, yeah, he dropped it. And then they're like, wait, what? That was a touchdown? So, yeah. I mean, Perri, what are your thoughts on this? Like, does Aaron Rodgers enter the season with Jordan Love, with the hypotheticals, with the NFL Top 100? Like, how many chips are stacking up on this man's shoulder, and what is the season going to look like for him?
I don't like the idea of chip on your shoulder because, like, if anyone's proven themselves in this league, it's Aaron Charles Rodgers, right? Like, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't think he has a chip on his shoulder. I do think, though, that he expects perfection from his team and from himself. And I think he probably, and this is me totally guessing. So like, here we are. But if knowing who he is and how high of a standard he holds himself to, I imagine he's looking at his numbers last season and maybe his ranking in the top 100. I can't imagine he cares too much about that. But like, and he's thinking, I got to do better because that's not me.
Yeah.
And so I think this season, he's going to come in ready and hungry and wanting to be like, no, I can still play at an MVP level. I know that I can, and I'm going to prove that. I don't necessarily think it's a chip on his shoulder. I think he's still going to go down as one of the greatest of all time, but it's definitely extra motivation.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we've heard this narrative before already. I've written about it, so I'm sorry. But I mean, we saw what happened with Matt LaFleur's second season with Matt Ryan with the Falcons. Matt Ryan won MVP. So we talk about Stacey Dales asked Aaron Rodgers about this today in his press conference. She had said, like, what does a second season look like under Matt LaFleur's offense? And, you know, we talked for a long time about, you know, trying to make sense of the draft class, because at first we didn't see a ton of sense in it with A.J. Dillon and Josiah DeGuara and like what that meant for the franchise moving forward. Yeah. And as we, you know, did more research and kind of dug into it, it was all setting up for Matt LaFleur to run the kind of offense that he's wanted to run. And that's no disrespect to Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers will be more successful without having to carry the full load. We saw it happen with Brett Favre when he was on the tail end of his career. Yeah. As your quarterback gets older, you don't want them to have to carry the full weight of the offense. And we've seen, you know, run the table and beyond some of the best stretches of QB play from Aaron Rodgers.
And he can still do all those things.
And that's what makes this offense so dangerous, you know, but now you've added a bulldozer with tree trunk calves. And
if you guys didn't know, Maggie loves A.J. Dillon.
I love A.J. Dillon so much. So much. I'll buy his jersey after we finalize our house. So
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I agree. I think it's like, he doesn't have to be Superman anymore, and that's pretty exciting because we can have a team that will support him. And if he has a game like he did against the Raiders where he decides to pull out a perfect passer rating, then like even better, try and stop us. Like literally try and stop us if we have Aaron Rodgers playing at an MVP level again. And another thing that a lot of people have been pointing out since the NFL 100 came out is ever since it's two other times Aaron was outside the top 10, and each season after that he had an MVP season. And James Jones also predicted that he was going to have an MVP season, and we saw James Jones' prediction last year. So
I have started lovingly referring to him as Jones Stradamus. So I'm going to trademark patent that, and anyone that ever calls him that, it was me. It's now live on the internet. Jones Stradamus. So
him and Russ Ball, just like magic.
All right. Well, this isn't a question, but this is really cool. Somebody stayed up in the UK to watch this. So thank you. That's amazing. I think on our first show, we had a couple of viewers from Brazil, which is incredible. So, you know, when they say Packers fans are worldwide, they mean it. And Packers fans are the best. And, you know,
Packers fans are the best.
But we're not biased. We're just preaching the gospel.
No, I mean, that doesn't say anything about us either. So.
All right. This is a good question from Facebook user. So is the defense better than last year, based on the additions that they made, or the lack of additions, however you want to look at it.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think it got worse. I think the key players are still there. Obviously, I'm gonna miss Tremont.
Perri, but, keep it together, Perri.
No, I'm kidding. I'm totally joking. But I think the key players and our starting defense is there, right? And we have a lot of players that you and I have talked about that we're super excited about their leap. So they could be, yeah, they very much could be better than last year. If we did our progression regression for Pax What She Said, and a lot of it is us predicting that some of these players do have a progression, and that's really exciting. And that could mean that the defense is better. But if they plateau and are the same, maybe fix some of the holes in the run defense, then it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if they're the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody looks at the sample size that was the NFC Championship game, and that's the red flag, right? So if you take out that game, the rest of the body of work from the defense is really exceptional. And the reason that it's the glaring, on everyone's radar is because it was the NFC Championship game, and nobody's discounting that. We get it. The Packers win that game. They're in the Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, you got to show up in those games.
Right. So I think that only adds to the defense now going forward, saying we never want to feel that way again. It's not going to happen. So
they know they're better than that too.
Right. And, even when Za'Darius after the fact kind of had said, we didn't feel like we were fully prepared. I think that's him being a leader and saying, we all have to understand what's at stake here. And I think if the Packers are lucky enough to find themselves in that position again, which I think they're obviously going back to the playoffs. Yeah. So the team itself, we've talked about this. We think it's going to be a better team with a worse record. Mm-hmm. But that worst record is still theoretically going to get them into the playoffs.
Yeah. And I mean, look, the worst record is they've got a really tough season. And they play some really tough opponents. The NFC is still stacked. And yeah, it's always a tough division too. So I don't know. I think we can do it. I always feel it, but I go into every season. He's on speed dial. Tell him I want him back.
Just say.
Just say hey. Yeah, but I
agree.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I think too, a lot of those guys, that was their first time in the playoffs. Think about how many players from the 2 seasons before are our starters now and had never played in a playoff game, and then win the division game at home, and then have to go back to California and play at the stadium against the team that beat their asses earlier in the season. There's a lot of mental there that for a first time, and that's no excuse, right? If you're a pro, you should be ready to go into any game. But I do think that there is probably a component to that maybe they kind of got caught up in the moment.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about this again and again, but Aaron Rodgers has never gotten to play an NFC Championship game at home. So, as much as the Seattle game stings, still 6 years later thinking about that game, or going to the NFC Championship game, playing the 49ers there, you just think about what it would mean to have that Lambeau atmosphere. And I'm obviously incredibly biased because I didn't even have tickets to the game, but I drove up for the Seattle game so that I could be in the environment for 4 hours of my time or whatever it was, to see everybody. And I can't describe it to somebody that's never been there. Just you feed off of it. And I know that, in Santa Clara or in Seattle, I'm sure the fans were doing the exact same thing where it's just this energy that you're projecting onto your team, right? So when you are at Lambeau, I want Aaron Rodgers to get to experience an NFC Championship game at Lambeau Field. That's all I want. That's playing for the Packers. Caveat.
Yeah. Oh my God, please. Yeah, I mean, he deserves it. And as we've heard from so many players, right, that's that home field advantage at Lambeau is super real, especially playoff environment when it's super cold. Yeah. Let's get the 49ers. Oh, you like that Cali weather? Why don't you try coming to Wisconsin?
It's already fall here.
I heard it's 50 degrees. Can I come up there because it's 100 degrees here and I am miserable?
My peak weather is 60, and it was 60 today, and I was just in my element.
I hate the heat, so I'm coming up.
Ugh, yeah. Please, I'll have a spare room for you soon.
yeah, if everyone didn't hear, Maggie bought a house. She's an adult.
Perri bought an apartment. She's also an adult.
I didn't buy an apartment, girl.
Perri's renting an apartment by herself.
Right. Yes. The answer is yes. Because if they don't, that's dumb, and the Packers largely and most often don't make that dumb of decisions. Although I will say that letting Micah Hyde walk was a dumb decision, but
I mean, it's easy to look through the looking glass.
Right, 2020, hindsight's 2020. Yeah.
I mean, but I do agree with you. I mean, I think like the Packers are very keen about homegrown players, and that was a Ted Thompson trait. And you know, when they invest a bunch of time and resources, the man is still so young. Like, he'll be on his third contract before some players get to their second contract.
He's 23, and he's been playing for what? This will be his fifth season. I don't even know. Like, he's so young.
I finally hit the point where most players are younger than me, and it just makes me feel some type of way.
They're your age, you're younger than you. Yeah. I think, yeah. I'm not there yet, thank God.
You're like 1 year, what are you, 25?
2.
Okay, I was like, you're 2 years, so like, let's not act like I'm like
you're
a
not.
grandmother. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
You're cool, young, and hip. We do have a logjam year. Yeah, Bakhtiari better get paid. Although he's definitely one of those guys. I mean, he said it in an interview recently that he is not the kind. He doesn't talk about it, right? So if he gets signed or if he doesn't, we're not going to know until that deal's done. He's super quiet about it. Player preference, I don't know. Kenny too. He said, "I let everyone deal with that. The guys upstairs deal with that." So I hope he gets paid. He's going to get paid.
Oh yeah, and Kenny Clark gets paid. Kenny gets paid for his production on the field, and then he pays his agent a significant amount of money to get him the money that keeps him playing on the field. So yeah. I mean, that is beyond my pay grade, trying to figure out how those contracts look.
We have one of the best money men in the league. I mean, seriously. So they will figure it out. He's worth keeping around. He's a player you build your defense around. We will not lose him. And like you said about the homegrown Ted Thompson sort of mindset, like that's what Goot comes from. He said that before. He said he still comes from that Ted Thompson mindset. And so I'm not worried, but he wasn't voted to the top 100. Do we want to even go there? It's dumb.
Let them sleep on him, because then we can pay him for cheaper. Because...
All right, so players that feel like they've been disrespected and have something to prove. Kenny Clark, Darius Smith, Aaron Jones. I'm sorry. Are we about to wreck the league, or are we about to wreck the league?
Wait, you forgot Aaron Charles Rodgers.
If you're sleeping on Aaron Charles Rodgers, you're just not paying attention.
Buy a new mattress. Get out of here.
Oh my God. I mean, Devonta Adams was voted 57. Like, what drugs are you on?
Thanks, I guess.
Like, literally, what are you smoking that you think he is number 57? Oh my God. Yeah, someone just said, yeah. Yeah, girl. Yeah. Jair about to be so hot this season. Like,
too hot.
Too hot.
We're not paying royalties for that, so no. Bruno Mars, don't come find us.
This is why you stay till the end of the show, because we're drunk. So
I'm not even close, girl. Keep up. All right, wait, that was okay. So getting back on the rails, we have Jared is one of our biggest supporters on Twitter. So Jared, thank you for now finding us on Happy Hour, because I guess you're used to us by now, but most people maybe aren't. But this is a really good point, right? Like, the defense will be better because the offense will be better on third down. And why will they be better on third down? Because of A.J. Dillon and Josiah DeGuara.
Yeah. And cohesion in year 2 of Matt LaFleur's offense.
I mean, that too. But, we talked about, again, ad nauseum, about the fact that the Packers could not sustain drives on offense and the defense was getting gassed. And that's largely part of why they couldn't stop the run in the NFC Championship game. So, really good point there that, the defense is going to be better and the offense will be better, and everything's just going to come up Millhouse.
Because the longer the offense is on the field, the more rest time we got. So,
yeah.
That's how that works, right?
Oh, we're not talking about this.
Don't bring that up in front of Maggie.
Man, he is upset.
I made her upset with my comments on Pack Day.
Oh, this is a good question. So, I mean, it's not really a question, but what are your thoughts on, kind of the whole right side of the line? Like, we have Corey Linsley coming into a contract year. You have Billy Turner. You have Ricky Wagner. Will that be your starting
Billy Turner
three?
on a contract year?
No, but I mean, they drafted 3 guys. So just kind of what are your thoughts on, like, how the right side of the line looks?
I mean, I think depth at O-line is never a bad thing to have, right? So, like, if Rick Wagner and Billy Turner are our starters and we have some of the rooks or, be a swing tackle, like, those guys get pretty beat up. So I don't think it says much about, like, how they feel about their starters. More so, like, it's a smart move to have really solid depth guys at the offensive line, because if you are not protecting your quarterback, your offense isn't going to run. And we saw what happened when Bulaga went down last season for a game or two, and we had to have some of those depth guys go in. Like, they just don't play as well, right? Like, there's blind spots and there's pressure coming from those areas that Aaron now has to deal with. So I think the draft was just smart moves.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw that, Simon Stepanak is still kind of nursing that ACL injury that he suffered at the tail end of his collegiate career. John Runyon Jr. is a name that a lot of people are really excited about. I think he kind of could play tackle, but still expect him to push for right guard. So there is, like, a small part of me that wonders if John Runyon Jr. will eventually be the long-term option at right guard, and if they'll think about pushing Billy Turner out wide at right tackle. Ricky Wagner's on kind of a minor contract, so he kind of may end up filling that Jared Veldier role where he just is the swing backup tackle in case something were to happen.
Yeah.
All right. What are your thoughts on this? Wait, I clicked the wrong one. Hold on.
Lane Taylor starting at right guard by week 4. I mean, I think there's a reason why we kept him, right? We thought he was going to, I personally thought he was going to be trade bait or just a casualty cut. He wasn't. So clearly they think there's something there. So if he plays, great. That's why they kept him.
Yeah. I mean, I think the fact that he took a negotiated contract kind of tells fans what the Packers think of him, but at this point now you have Lucas Patrick, who's also kind of a backup interior lineman. He can play center, he can play guard. So I think what I'm most interested in is kind of what that backup tackle spot looks like, whether they try John Runyon there. Josh Nijman, I'm really excited about coming back. And not putting this into the universe per se, but you do have David Bakhtiari in a contract year and Ricky Wagner. Don't make that face. Perri, we're bringing people the knowledge here, okay? David Bakhtiari. David Bakhtiari is in a contract year. Ricky Wagner was not signed to a very robust long-term deal, so theoretically you're looking for pieces, at the tackle positions. And I do think David Bakhtiari comes back, but right tackle is still going to be a need.
He's the stopgap. Yeah. So we hope that, like, someone like John Runyon or one of the other offensive linemen that we drafted can fill that spot long term, because that's the goal, right? Rather than pay someone a 3-year, $30 million contract to come in, use your rook.
Well, and I mean, I think that's part of, like, the Packers did what they could in free agency this offseason. They spent a massive amount of money in 2019, and it obviously paid off for them. I mean, you have Za'Darius Preston, Adrian Amos, and Billy Turner, and all of those guys played beyond expectations, I think, in 2019. So coming into 2020, then you knew that your cap space was limited. You lost Blake Martinez, you brought in Christian Kirksey, and then you signed, like, the cheapest wide receiver and cheapest offensive tackle that you could find. And now you're hoping to build off of that. Like, I think Devin Funchess was obviously a little bit of a stopgap. I was excited to see what he could do with Aaron Rodgers. He was coming off that injury. So I don't think we've ever gotten to fully see what he can do in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially if he worked on his drops, which, Aaron Rodgers would hammer that home to him, that he cannot be dropping the ball. But we'll see if he comes back in 2021. His contract should kind of just roll over. So depending on what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they had, like, a pretty good relationship already, right? Where they are chatting and we're looking forward to getting on the field. And I just think it's one of those years where kind of roll with the punches in that scenario. But I don't think that anything in our wide receiver or offense, like, drastically changes because Devin Funchess opted out. Like, I don't think he's that, like, X factor that we were missing.
Yeah, but his workouts were fun. Like, I don't know if any of you follow, like, NFL players on Instagram, but some of the stuff that they can do, like, Devin Funchess was so impressive, and, wish him obviously nothing but the best. The health of his family is obviously the biggest goal here. This is kind of an interesting question. Do you see a possible Jimmy G scenario with the Patriots playing out in Green Bay if we win it all? So kind of what Jordan Love, what happens with him long-term in Green Bay?
Do you know what round Jimmy G was picked in? Was he a first-round pick?
I don't remember.
I don't think he was. And I think that's a big difference.
He wasn't.
I also think, like, people love to hype up the Patriots, like, all fine and dandy, but, like, I don't think their quarterback situation this year was great. Like, they obviously signed Cam Newton, who's a wonderful QB, coming off a few, pretty big injuries. He's a vet. Like, otherwise they just had Josh Stidham, and Bill Belichick can hem and haw all he wants about how he can do whatever he wants with any quarterback comes into that room. Thank you. Someone said he was a second-round pick. Very different situation, right? Very different. The Packers traded up in the first round for Jordan Love. Like, very, very different scenario. So, no. I think at the end of the day, no. I also think that it was dumb of the Patriots to trade away Jimmy G when their quarterback was 40 years old. Granted, it is Tom Brady, but look at them now, right? He's in Tampa, and they had to go out and get Cam Newton. So, no, and I also don't want that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers talked a little bit about this today, how if he wants to retire when the Packers are ready to move on from him, then everything's roses, and he just kind of rides off into the sunset as the retired Packers quarterback. Right. I agree, Perri. I don't want anything else to happen, but, he said that there might be in some alternate universe, Perri, that's not going to happen in this universe, where he's not ready to retire yet, and the Packers are ready to start Jordan Love. So those are things that you have to consider where, what does that kind of look like? And I think the Patriots knew that Tom Brady, he was the guy. I think they felt at that point when the Jimmy G stuff was happening that Tom still had some years in him. And it just feels kind of different. And
it's just different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Different, very different systems, different ways of doing business, different quarterbacks, different ages. It just doesn't feel. But I think in general, like, obviously that's something that's been floated, right? But I just think I don't think that's the optimal scenario. You don't want to trade away your first round pick. You just don't want to have to do that ever. And that goes for quarterback, or it goes for wide receiver, it goes for linebacker, it goes for anyone that you take in the first round. You hope that that's a player that does things for your franchise.
Yeah. Also, this can probably be one of our last questions. I mean, we're kind of getting to the top of the hour, but does the record of the Packers dictate if they move on from Aaron Rodgers or if they stick with him? What do you think?
As much as I hate to admit it, you look at guys like Tom, like Peyton Manning, like Philip Rivers, right? Like guys who've been with their franchises for a long time. Quarterbacks are playing well into their late ages these days. And I think with any position, quarterback aside, it's pretty uncommon for a player to really play out their whole career with one team. So the record dictates that he will.
Yeah. I mean, I talked to my dad a little bit about this when my dad and I will just talk football. And that's one of the things that we talked about is the fact that, like, it's a different era of sports, right? Like, we fall in love with the guys like Donald Driver who do get to play out their career for the same team. And it's just not the norm that it used to be. Like, you used to sign with a team and you would retire with the team. Yeah. And if this offseason was any kind of indication of that, you had Tom Brady, Philip Rivers, like, guys are moving left and right, and they were players that had spent an extensive amount of time with their teams. So, I think Drew Brees was kind of the anomaly there where he came back and said, I'm going to give you another year. Yeah. If things don't go well in New Orleans, I think that Drew Brees likely retires a Saint. I don't see him trying to go be like the Patriots quarterback of the future. And I think that that's what makes this kind of era of football so unique. It's just that, like, as much as everyone was scorned by Brett Favre leaving, I think that was kind of like the entryway into this era of sports where contracts aren't what they used to be, and players don't get the luxury of retiring where we want them to.
Yeah.
Like,
if
you're lucky enough to get like 4 or 5 years out of a Hall of Famer like Reggie White, or when Julius Peppers came to Green Bay for a couple seasons, if you're lucky and privileged enough to have that person on your roster, you cherish that, but it definitely is the exception and not the norm.
Yeah, and I would say as one final thought to this, is the new wave is getting your franchise quarterback on that rookie deal and using that level of contract, like we saw with Pat Mahomes, to build stars around them while they're on their rookie deal to win that Super Bowl with as much star power as possible. And that's just what the Chiefs did. And I think that's what a lot of teams are trying to do, is why rookies like Love start earlier and you want them on that contract. So, but I will say Mr. Goldstein, my father, thinks that Aaron is going to retire Packers. So we're gonna end on that.
So we're gonna leave with Mr. Goldstein's advice, or it's definitely gonna happen.
It's his prophecy. So we have 5 minutes, but we want to plug us and plug our next show.
Mm-hmm. So this starts in 5 minutes, which is insane.
It starts in 5 minutes.
Yeah, stay tuned.
So the Freezer guys have their first live show coming up. So if you're in YouTube, stay on the Game On Wisconsin YouTube channel for them. It's going to be great. They're going to talk even more Packers, another hour of Packers talk.
What more could you want?
What more could you ask for? You can follow Maggie and I at, you have the little banners?
Yeah, I'm just waiting to see which one you say first.
Oh, which one I say first? Okay.
Yeah.
You can follow Maggie at Maggie J. Loney on Twitter. You can follow me at Perri_Goldstein, Perri, Perri. Thank you, parents, for that difficult name. And then we podcast once a week with Pax What She Said. So you're so on it right now. At PWSS Podcast. And then we both also podcast with the Pack-A-Day crew. So you can find me every other Monday, and you can find Maggie every Thursday.
I don't have a banner for them. I'm sorry. Next week.
That's okay.
Next week we'll have a banner.
Yeah. Any parting words, my friend?
If you like what we do, please make sure that you follow Game On Wisconsin on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. Please make sure you like the video. Liking us makes us feel good about ourselves. We can always use a little morale boost. Each week we make like a little bet with ourselves, because apparently Perri and I really like to gamble about how many live viewers we can get at a time. And I think 35 is our record at this point after being 3 episodes in. So, keep climbing with the brand. We're really excited about the direction this is going. And definitely make sure on Wednesday that you check out Lombardi's Bar with Jimmy, Dan, and Todd. They will have Kenny Clark on the show. Really exciting. Yeah, Kenny Clark, the man. We love him. Hopefully he has a new contract to talk about by the time he joins the bar. But thank you, as always, for joining us on the live show. We love doing this, and we appreciate your comments and your feedback. So
we do. Come every Monday.
Yeah, every single Monday. Go back up.